Isn't there a 28th Amendment that's being talked about now to end Citizens United?
There is, and that's the amendment I'm talking about. That's the amendment I'm talking about. Yes. You would need it, but you would need an amendment. Have you guys thought about that name, though? What has happened since Citizens United? The citizens lost their power, and we've never been less united.
It's like right to work law.
Right, exactly.
It's a perversion.
Yeah, it is. It's corruption. That's what people fear most. So, but to get back to the drug problem, so we have done a disservice in this country. We have thought that we can allow wastelands to exist in parts of our country, and we kept thinking in the 60s and 70s that wasteland will never make its way to my door, to the suburbs. In the late 70s, most African Americans in cities worked in factories. In the early 80s, most of those factory jobs were going elsewhere. What always happens, we know this. We already know what happens when an area becomes deindustrialized. We already know it. As sure as we know what happens when somebody gets diabetes or when somebody gets cancer. We know what happens when people lose jobs, when a community loses its factory. We neglected those communities. We thought, nope, they're not citizens like us. They're second-class citizens. Let them move. Let them go somewhere else and find a job. And what always happens when people lose factories is they became addicted. And we decided, instead of investing in them, in those communities, as fellow citizens should, we decided to once again put them in cages so that we can forget about them, to demonize them. And now it's happening to the white community. Sure enough, deindustrialization is hitting Appalachia, and people are getting hooked on meth, partly because this is why jobs are more than a paycheck. It's a community. It's a work ethic. It's the sense that we as Americans are working together to make it run. Yes?
You guys are lucky to have your hometown. You know where to go back to. The changes in industry and everything. My hometown's gone.
Yeah.
I have no hometown to go back to.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I can't even see what my neighborhood used to look like.
Right. And the whole, I mean, I feel some guilt about my own situation in a sense. Not guilt. It wasn't my fault. It was a system. I feel compassion for every area that gets hit by this. And I think one way to address the drug problem is to make sure there's a job available for everybody. Because especially, a lot of times, often for men in this area, they grow up in culturally with a sense, I need to be the caretaker for this family. And either you're working, but if you lose your job, what are you? What good are you? Families break up, and people get hooked. So that's number one. Number two, I think that we should start treating drug addiction not like a crime, but like it is a medical condition. How far has it gotten us arresting our way out of the drug problem? We've done very good work for drug traders over the border, or actually they go around the water now, right? 95% of the drug trade goes over water. I don't know if you go. Well, right. They're going to see the wall before they get to the, throw the bags, make it invisible. But either way, especially with medical marijuana, that's a no-brainer. Almost every American, 9 out of 10 Americans, think that your doctor should be able to write you a prescription for a drug that doesn't get you hooked, kill your liver, and kill your kidneys, like oxycodone and all the opioids do, right? It's a no-brainer. There's a cop in DeKalb County who's fighting hard for medical marijuana. And I think we need a more libertarian marijuana program. Instead of having to rely on pharmaceutical companies, this is a plant you can grow in your home. So if you go to the doctor, just like in Washington State, you go to the doctor, you say, I'm suffering with depression, anxiety. The doctor will have a list of things that it treats, and he gives you a slip. You can grow up to 3 plants, a permit, in your home. And you can solve a lot of pain issues, and then you wouldn't have as many employment issues either. So I think that's the best solution. Kate again, and then Christian.
So medical marijuana is an obvious solution. A lot of people are scared of it because they don't understand it, and a lot of people are, and that's understandable because there isn't much research on it because it's illegal, and if you want to research it, then the government pulls some of their funding, which is necessary to continue that research project. But what we do know is that there are risks. A lot of people know that. People are scared because they say it gives you a high. So there are risks to medical marijuana. Marijuana can halt brain development. It can cause a high. It can cause intoxication. But opioids are much, much worse. Opioids cause an extreme high. They're very, very addictive, and they destroy your body. Medical marijuana would be safe for adults and even children who really need it, because a lot of children with seizures and issues like that, the other medicine they take ruins their health, or it makes them look like a zombie. It makes them act like a zombie. It takes away their minds. Medical marijuana would be a solution to so many problems with the medicine people take. There would be less addiction, and anyway, marijuana, when smoked, can be unsafe, but when it's processed in a certain way by doctors, like it should be, then it's perfectly safe. I'm not perfectly safe, but every drug has side effects.
She's too young to primary me.
She's a politician in the making.
My question was, why doesn't government do enough? All I have noticed was they just do like the bare minimum of trying to get unemployment up, due to drugs obviously is obviously a big problem. But why do they actually take the time to invest to rehabbing the people into getting much better shape, and at the same time jobs are going away? Then why do they take that time to retrain the people to do other jobs? Example, going green. Right. Of course you don't want coal and all that stuff. So why can't we not retrain the coal miners to put up solar windmills and stuff like that? Why doesn't government do enough to rehab and retrain?
Right. Thank you. I think that the answer is that fear looks like it's very cheap. And it's cheap to run on fear, right? Green energy is going to take your job. These liberals are, wanting to transform our society. And these drug addicts are going to come in and, destroy your community. So, it looks cheap. You don't see it. When's the last time anybody in here has visited a prison? I'm ashamed to say it was last year for me. My church went and but it wasn't enough, right? It's not enough to go visit once and feel good about yourself. We got to do real prison reform. We got to go retroactive. People who are just in there for pot need to be out. Why would you put somebody in a cage? And of course, I'll call myself a conservative, but it seems to me a conservative idea is that government shouldn't be able to tell you what you do with your body on your land.
Or pay the amount of money we pay to keep them in jail.
Exactly, right.
Accountability boards and sending people to rehab is cheaper, and you don't just cage people, you actually
don't throw them away.
Because like they said too, it's a bigger issue, because then you've disrupted families.
Exactly.
Then you have a situation where, and this is the thing that gets me as we're talking about this, we put the money in the wrong place, because now we're in a situation where we're shipping prisoners to other states.
Yeah.
Then those families cannot visit them, that connection is lost, and we have so many people, like, I teach at
I work at North Georgia Technical College, and you have so many young people who sometimes very often say they want to go into criminal justice because they see it as a growth industry.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, when there's so many other things that people could be doing with the skills that they have. Even when we talk about infrastructure, cleaning up, our communities, fixing our roads. And then there's a whole other level of discussion that doesn't happen in this region, which is investing in people for entrepreneurship. Right. There are jobs that we couldn't even imagine.
And people aren't even allowing young people to explore those things because, the work field is changing. I mean, you know, even you talk about your story of your family. My family worked at Coast and Clark, but they were also entrepreneurs, and that's the only thing that kept them away from poverty because they were getting slave wages even then, you know, but they weren't making a lot.
Yeah.
So people have to know, find out a way. We can't be at the mercy of people who are our bosses and be our own bosses.
What happens when you put somebody in prison for drug abuse is you don't do anything, you don't do enough to rehabilitate them, is that you put them into a culture, an environment that encourages drug use, encourages violence and gang violence. You're putting them in a place where these things are cool. You're not teaching them to get their lives back. You're putting them in a place where getting their lives back isn't cool, where it's not what's popular. You're giving them more drug dealers. You're giving, for when they get out, you're giving them more
well, it's the underground economy that they're
Corey. Yes.
Kind of to
If you don't mind, it's recording.
a little bit to go back to what you do policy-wise as our representative, talking about jobs in this area. We all know that many of these jobs are low-paying jobs, so where do you stand on the minimum wage? And I do have to say that I am liberal, but I have that conservative streak. I am a business owner, and I know that taking minimum wage up for everybody is not really in my opinion, is not the answer as a business owner. So I wonder where you stand on that.
Great question. I have an idea. So, first of all, Walmart can afford to pay a living wage, and they're the biggest employer in the world. They're sitting on a mountain of wealth that they and their grandchildren will never make, but that was earned for them by workers in China and by workers here. They can afford a living wage. And there are other industries in this country that are sitting on a lot of wealth. And every dollar of that wealth came at some point from somebody who was picking, processing, teaching, nursing, healing. Every penny that Goldman Sachs is sitting on right now started with a working person. Every penny. I don't believe in punishing them for their skills. It takes skill to do those, to make those financial transactions. However, they could not make the same cash in Ethiopia as they make here. They owe their wealth to this nation. Not all of it, but why not encourage entrepreneurship, and for the companies that make under a certain level, have a truly progressive system, not just for individual tax rates, but also for corporate tax rates. For small businesses that really can't afford to have a living wage, $15 an hour, why not subsidize that through an annual 1% wealth tax? 1%. I pay more than 1% on my house every year, and I'm glad to do it because I'm paying for education, and I would rather live in an educated society. Why can't Goldman Sachs, which has gotten a lot of benefit from our society, from the taxpayer, why not a 1% annual wealth tax on $1 million companies and above to subsidize wages? We do a lot of taking out of wages. What would it look like if for people who are working? Now, this is not a free ride, right? This is people who are devoting. People say that, getting a living wage is giving somebody something for nothing. They don't deserve it. They're just flipping burgers. But they're not just trading a skill. They are giving the hours of their day that they will never have back. They are leaving their home to make somebody else a profit. They deserve, at the very least, to be able to put a roof over their heads, to pay for clothing and food. We're already subsidizing them anyway, by the way. But it's not Goldman Sachs subsidizing them. It's not SunTrust Bank. It's not the big banks. It's you and me. Walmart couldn't run one day without food stamps. They even have instructions in their break rooms on how to get on public welfare. And I'm glad to do it, right, for people who don't work, but I don't want to do it for them. I'm not doing it for Walmart. And so Walmart needs to pay a fair wage for a fair day's work. And I think that we can do a progressive tax system where small businesses who don't make $1 million are subsidized by businesses who aren't providing labor and jobs to our communities. Not as punishment, but out of a sense of justice and obligation.
People see stare down at janitors, at fast food workers, and
Right.
people with not the best jobs.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't realize that they benefit from those people's work every day.
Mhm.
Who do they want? Do they want dirty bathrooms and disgusting hallways?
Right.
Do they want? Do they never? I'm sure that a lot of people who hate burger flippers getting enough money to support their families and get their kids to college. I'm sure they love going to McDonald's and getting a $2 burger.
And let me tell you this. I'm paying an extra 25 cents for a burger to know that the people who are giving me my burger are able to put a roof over their heads. I'm fine with that, and I think most Americans would be. You're right. Nobody ever, isn't that crazy that nobody ever looks there? That, that nobody ever thinks, where's all this money coming from? That they're working out of charity, but yeah.
We like to demonize certain people, and then we don't hold other people responsible. That's the bottom line. Because even as you were talking about, ordinary people could understand the janitors and the people working, in fast food restaurants because they're in their family. If they're not brothers and sisters and cousins and nephews or whatever else. And even, I would like to think that they would do it for the right reason, but, we're talking about health care, and I've said it 1,000 times. Okay, we're dealing with this flu craze that's happening. That's because people cannot get health care, and they are working. They can't take time off, and they are serving bags from windows as we speak with the flu at no fault of their own. So it becomes, like you said, it all comes to our doors. I don't care if you live in a gated community or not. And so I think the more we talk about the people that we can see and touch and talk to, and not just stay in the realm of the philosophy of the thing, then we can only win, because other people who demonize folks are trying to push them as far away as they possibly can and make them, oh, you're not a citizen, you're not a human, oh, you don't think the way I do, you don't dress the way I do, you speak another language, you're a threat to me and mine. So I think, just the idea that we're gathering together today is just like a wonderful thing.
I love the spirit in this room. And I do believe that two things connect us more intimately than any other part of our society: the economy and healthcare. It affects me whether you're vaccinated or not. It affects me. I'm just a teacher at Riverside Military Academy. But if people, with Bernie Madoff, or if people at Bear Stearns are making faulty mortgages, it affects my job, right? We are so intimately connected with one another. And, the Republican Party calls itself the party of personal responsibility. I think that we're more responsible than they claim. We're responsible for the next generation. Whatever society we hand on to our children, we did it. We made those decisions. Nobody ever came into this world asking to be born. Nobody made the world they were born into. I didn't choose to grow up in a country where public education was guaranteed. I didn't choose to grow up in an area where my father had a job with good insurance, or my mother worked very hard in a factory job, right? I didn't choose to be born in the situation I was born into. And if we keep letting fear and resentment and hatred divide us against one another, our children are going to have a poorer future, a sicker future, and the scariest part is a warmer and a wetter future, which for our environment, if you've seen the force of the recent hurricanes, it's only getting worse. So we have got to find a way. First of all, that's the first step, is that neighbor-to-neighbor communication. The ancient Romans, I'm sorry I taught this lesson today in my Latin class. I'm sorry, I'm a teacher, so bear with me. You got coffee. The Roman aristocracy ruled for hundreds of years over the Roman people who did the work. And they knew what they had to do. They had a bundle of sticks that were tied together, little sticks tied together. It was a symbol of the power of the Senate over the rest of the people, the wealthy over the rest. They said, we are just a few people. Think about how many people in the Walmart family there are, and the Koch brothers, or even, who's the guy sending out the checks I never get? What's his name? they're paying people to protest. Yeah, Soros. I've been in many protests and I've never gotten my Soros check. But either way, he must be sitting at the wrong address. But even George Soros, right? Nobody, don't care what side you're on. They're only powerful because they are together. They're unified. And we are incredibly divided. And the Romans knew that. In fact, let me tell you the name of that little bundle of sticks. The name of it was the fasces, which is where we get the word fascism. A small minority of people who are united and consistent can overcome a divided population. It's very dangerous.
That was the plan.
It was, yes.
One more topic to hit on, because you are in school and we have in the education vouchers, school vouchers. How are people feeling about that? Where do you stand on that? It's very hard for me to kind of wrap my head around how that's going to work. I just know that teaching, people that are teachers, I've yet to talk to a single one, an R or a D, that wants school vouchers.
Right. Yeah. Well, I am against. I'm against school vouchers to some extent, and let me talk about it in not an either or way. And it's not because I haven't thought about it or don't have a stance on it. Let me tell you my stance. I do respect the right of parents to decide to homeschool their children, and I think that if anything, we need to maybe subsidize their work. Right? I think a lot of families would work really well, at home as long as they're getting opportunities for enrichment and learning how to teach their kids, because they need some education too. But vouchers for private schools, I don't want my tax money being collected against my will to go to private companies, and I'm a Christian, I don't want to be taxed to be paying for churches, which is what it would turn into. In this area, right, this is one of the reasons we fought a revolution.
It also divides the haves from the have-nots.
Exactly, it does. Once again,
especially in a community like this, where even if I got a voucher, I can't drive my child 50 miles to the nearest, place every day because I have to get to work and that sort of thing. So it already then it divides that even more, and we know that also divides along the color line, and that is not okay.
And if you wouldn't mind, I don't want to go on and on. I know you guys, it's Friday night, and you guys are so amazing for coming out here and listening to me go on and on. But I want to talk about my education stance for a little bit, some of my ideas. Number one, I've been